Good morning, everybody. Payneblade back here again with another Genshin Impact video. And today, guys, we're going to be covering Venti. Yes, this is the current rate up banner, and there's only 10 days left, guys, to get this amazing unit. And what I wanted to do today, like I did with Diluc and Catching, is I wanted to go over all of his abilities, his stats. We want to go over his artifacts, the weapons to use for him, and go over his constellations, and actually show you a showcase of his damage and what he's capable of. So, the thing with Venti is I want everybody to note that if you're looking for a huge damage dealer, he's not a Diluc, he's not a Catching, he is utility at its finest. Now, what makes Venti so damn good is not only what he brings to the battlefield, but what he brings outside of it. So let's actually start off with talking about the character and his attributes. So the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure he has some sort of survivability. So HP is pretty important for someone like Venti, and he's what is known as a kiter, right? So essentially, his job is to run around and peck at the enemy and take them out while his elemental skill and his burst go back up using energy particles and cooldowns. So survivability is good. You do want to take some hits. Now, attack is great. He does have one of the fastest attacks in the game, and I'm going to show you that real quick shortly once we go over the skills. But definitely put some work into his attacks. Defense, not as important, of course. Being a kiter, he's going to be moving a lot. He's going to be running up and down. He's going to be flying a little bit. So definitely not the craziest thing. Elemental mastery is actually pretty important for him because his burst actually combines with any element and will actually train into that element once per burst. So highly recommended to get elemental mastery up for him. Max stamina, of course, is important. That's just going to come from your statues. That's irrelevant for him. Now, here's the thing. I had him built two different ways. I had him built once with crit and crit damage, which he did decent damage, actually, with all of his specials. So I switched that up just to try energy recharge because I wanted to see if I could possibly put in as much possible energy into getting his burst back up, and it actually works pretty well. So my recommendation, you can build them one or two ways, guys. You can build them with attack and crit, or you can build them pure energy burst with what I also added here was Anemo damage, sorry, which essentially is his elemental damage. Now this is huge because most of his skills, including his scope, and so his charge attack and his burst and his elemental skill obviously require this. So you want to stack as much Anemo damage as possible. So that's pretty much how I built him. Currently built as energy recharge and Anemo damage bonus. All right, so let's actually go into the next thing, the weapons. So currently I have this specific weapon on him, the Amos bow. Now, the reason why I have all this on him is I like to kite quite a bit, and right now this bow actually increases normal attack and damage or aim shot damage by 18%, increases damage by 12% for every 0.1 seconds that an arrow is in flight. It stacks up to 5 times. Now, this is huge, guys, for him because he shoots so freaking fast that you can get these arrows out there pretty quickly, and every single time an arrow is up to 5 times, you can get your damage increased by 60%. So what I usually like to do is I like to shoot 5 arrows, quickly do his elemental, shoot another 5 arrows, and then quickly do his burst. That'll increase everything that he does by 60%. So an amazing roll, probably the best one out there. Another not bad option if you're going to go crit-based build is the Skyward Harp. Now this increases crit damage by 25%. Hits have a 70% chance to inflict a small AoE attack, dealing 125% physical attack damage, and this can occur in 3.5 seconds. So this is not bad, especially combined with his current E skill. He can actually throw up more AoE and kill groups of enemies a lot quicker. Alright, so another really good bow for him is going to be the Sacrificial Bow. Now this is kind of a cool bow, but it does have a long cooldown. After damaging an opponent with an elemental skill, the skill has an 80% chance to end its own cooldown, can only occur once every 16 seconds. Now, his elemental skill has 2 bonuses. Number 1, it can do a regular, it's like a vacuum that sends enemies flying up into the air. And the second one is a charged one, which has a longer cooldown, but does way more damage and has a longer AoE radius, so it hits a lot more enemies. It's kind of cool to have an 80% chance to do that twice in a row, which can actually do a massive amount of damage, considering most of his damage comes from his skills. So that's a highly recommended bow for a 4-star. His probably best 4-star bow, though, is going to be the Stringless. Now, this increases elemental skill and elemental burst damage by 48% at the max level in terms of refinement, guys. Highly recommended to try to get this bow for him, especially if you're free to play. This is going to be one of the best bows for Venti because most of his damage, again, comes from both the elemental skill and the elemental burst damage. Now, every other bow on the list is not bad. I don't recommend them as much, but one 3-star bow that's actually really good is the Messenger. Aim shot hits on weak opponents Add an additional 100% attack damage as crit damage can only occur once every 10 seconds. If you don't know about Venti's attack, he actually does a really good charged attack with an aim shot, and if you hit weak spots, this does a ton of damage. So really good bow if you're going to be sniping quite a bit. So highly recommend the Messenger as a 3-star bow. But right now we're going to stick to the Amos bow based on what he does. All right, so artifacts. What did I put him in? So I put him in the 4-piece set. Here, the Exile is essentially what I wanted to use because I wanted to use the energy recharge bonus. Plus, every time he uses an elemental burst, which he does a lot, he regenerates 2 energy for the other party members every 2 seconds for 6 seconds, which means he's giving a ton more utility already. So that allows other characters to throw in their elemental burst while he does his, combining that element together with his Anemo element. All right, so let's talk about his constellations. So we have him maxed out here, okay? So Spitting Gales. Now this is kind of cool. He fires 2 additional arrows per aimed shot, each dealing 33% of the original arrow's damage. Now let me show you how that works, guys, okay? So when you do his charged shot, normally without that constellation, he'll shoot 1 arrow that is Anemo damage. With this constellation, he shoots 3, as you saw that, and both arrows do 33% of the original damage of the main one. It actually does a ton of damage, so we'll show you that during one of the fights. All right, let's go back into his other constellations. Now his second constellation, Breeze of Remnants, decreases enemy Anemo resistance by 12% for 10 seconds. Enemies launched by Skyward Sonnet suffer an additional 12% Anemo resistance and physical resistance, decreasing while they're airborne, which means if you're shooting enemies up in the air or doing another Anemo burst, so for example, you do his burst, right? If you do Anemo Sonnet and then do his burst, you're hitting them for 12% more damage for the 10 seconds that your burst is up. So it does a ton of damage. Also, they do physical resistance decrease as well, which means if you throw in a physical character in there while they're slashing and hitting the opponents take 12% more damage. So it is actually a phenomenal constellation. It increases your DPS quite drastically. All right, O2 Winds obviously increases the skill by 3%. Hurricane of Freedom. When Venti picks up an elemental orb or particle, he receives a 25% Anemo damage bonus for 10 seconds. So ideally, guys, if you can kill anybody with an elemental move and they drop an orb, pick that up and then use your burst, you'll be doing 25% more wind damage using that. All right, and the 5th one, of course, is the increased level of Skyward Sonnet, which is his elemental skill. And lastly, the last one is Storm of Defiance. Targets who take damage from wind, so his burst, essentially Wind's Grand Ode, have their Anemo resistance decreased by 20%. If elemental absorption occurred, then their resistance towards the corresponding element is also decreased by 20%. And what that means, guys, essentially, is every time you do a burst while he does his, so let's say you switch to Diluc and you do his Phoenix, so the fire burst will also cause them to lose 20% on fire as well, so pyro. So this is a phenomenal way to increase your damage for all users, including everyone else on your team with different elements. So his constellations are actually some of the perfect ones, like fit for his kit. So definitely one of the coolest characters to have dupes for. All right, so talents. Now the first one is the Divine Marksmanship. Now he performs up to 6 consecutive shots with a bow, performs a precise aim shot with increased damage while aiming favorable winds will accumulate on the arrowhead. A full charge arrow will deal Anemo damage, as we mentioned before. So if you fully charge it, you'll notice at the tip it'll actually shine. He'll end up changing his from physical to Anemo damage, which is a lot more damage for him. And then plunging attack, of course, fires off arrows in midair for falling and striking the ground, dealing AoE damage. Now his skill attributes, you can see here, the first damage does not that much, but the second, third do a lot more. The 4th one does 2 in a row. 5th and 6th do a ton more. So definitely worth throwing in all that damage. Aim shot is quite high, especially with the constellation of 3 different arrows. Now, Skyward Sonnet. Now, this here actually has 2 different skills. One, if you press it once, it'll send enemies flying into the air, and at the same time, while they're in the air, when they land, they actually go slow, which means you can kite them better, right? So that's kind of the purpose here. Now, if you hold it, on the other hand, it has a longer cooldown of 15 seconds, but it summons an even larger wind domain and actually does a bigger damage, and it sends him flying into the air. And coming back down, you can do your plunging damage, which also does a ton of damage. And also, you can actually fly away if you're looking to kite. If there's too many enemies coming at you at once, you can actually create some distance between yourself and them, and actually fly away and kite them. And at the same time, this is actually used for exploring. Probably one of the best moves for exploring out there. I'm going to show you real quick what it does, guys, if you don't know. So let's say you're at a high spot and you're low on stamina. This will actually send you up, and you can actually go ahead and fly like this. So definitely worth exploring and putting some work into, because this is probably one of my most used skills on the exploration side, especially with getting things like statue icons and things that are missing, like treasure chest, or just even plants and mines that I can't get to just normally climbing. So highly recommend that. All right, let's go into his talent. Now, his actual special, I have a video clip for you guys. I'll show you what it does real quick. But essentially, it's a giant vacuum that he shoots an arrow in the air, and it sucks in everything around him and brings them right into the middle of that arrow. And it keeps creating a vacuum where it constantly hits them with Anemo damage. Now, if you switch over to another character and you do one of the following elements, so Hydro, Pyro, Kyro, or Electro, it will also deal additional damage on top of Anemo with one of those. And it can only happen once, guys, so you can't just keep switching constantly and it'll absorb and keep doing different elements. It'll just do the one element, but you can switch to other characters to combine the elements while they're up in the air being vacuumed, right? Skill does a ton of damage, guys. It has an amazingly fast cooldown, and if you build him energy recharge, you can almost spam this every few seconds. So highly recommend this. This is his bread and butter for damage. So if you see here, like his dot is 56.4%, additional elemental damage is 28.2 when you switch over to somebody else, and the energy cost is not that much. So you definitely want to put in as much energy recharge as possible. All right, Embrace of the Wind. Holding Skyward Sonic creates an up current that lasts for 20 seconds. I just showed you that, guys. That is used primarily for traveling and exploring, or you can use it during a battle, of course, if you hold it down for 15 seconds. But that current will stick around for 20 seconds, so you have time to do a lot of puzzles and use this to your advantage in terms of puzzle solving and exploration. All right, Stormite currently is locked until phase 4. So this actually regenerates 15 energy for Venti after the effects of Winds of Ode are done, so essentially it's burst. If an element absorption occurs, this also restores 15 energy to all characters of the corresponding element in the party. So let's say you use Deluxe Phoenix, everyone who's a fire or a pyro user will also get 15 energy back, okay? But keep in mind, it's only for people who have the corresponding element that was used. And then lastly, Wind Rider, guys. This is actually really important. Decreases all party members' gliding stamina consumption by 20%. This is huge, especially for exploration purposes. So let's jump into a quick couple battles, guys. I'm going to show you some stuff here that he's able to do, and hopefully this will give you an idea of what his uses are and how good he is as a person on the battlefield and not only exploration. So hopefully you guys enjoy the showcase. Have a great day, guys.